Hello again, everyone. Keta Kosman, publisher of Madison's Lumber Reporter. Here we are at the beginning of March, and several of the questions that were still up in the air for my last couple of videos about Softwood Lumber Duty and in general tariffs on Canadian products entering into the US have been answered. So, first of all, what we do know and what is an existing condition is the duty. And every year, the Commerce Department in the US issues an administrative review. They spend the previous year, in this case, the 2023 data of Canadian lumber crossing the border into the US, volumes and price, and many other factors, but that's the main part of it, to determine what will the coming year, now 2025, the CVD, AD, the countervailing and anti-dumping duties be for Canadian wood. So for 2024, it was approximately 15%, as I was explaining earlier, and it is now coming up to 30%. So what this means is before the lumber can be exported out of Canada to cross the border in the US, it will be assessed what is the duty, and the Canadian company sending that lumber pays that penalty at the border before the wood can cross over. Okay? So that's been going on now, for decades. Current softwood lumber dispute number 5 that we are in started immediately in 2016 after the previous softwood lumber agreement expired, literally the month after. Okay? Now, this new tariff now also comes into effect at the border, but on the importing side of the US. So it has nothing to do with the company in Canada bringing the lumber across the border from Canada. This is now assessed at the border in the US by the US importing company before that wood can progress into America. This is going to be directly added to the price of the product that the US importer will be selling to the end user. So whether that is a retailer, your local hardware store, or a small building contractor buying wood in relatively smaller volume, or the large US home builders, the big companies that build hundreds and hundreds of tracts of homes with hundreds and hundreds of units in them, they all will be having this 25% tariff added directly onto the price of the material that they are buying from the wholesaler, the importer, whoever is bringing that wood across the who's bringing that wood from the border of Canada into the US. Now, to dig deeper into the dynamics of the situation, the volumes, what is the amount of wood, the value of Canadian lumber coming into the US, what is the availability of timber in the US to make their own lumber so they don't need Canada, and all of these things, that data has now come out for full year 2024. So we can compare to the previous couple of years and see what is the situation with the market, with the customer, and with the producer. So starting off with lumber and US import, this graph is showing 2020 to the end of last year, 2024. Purple line is total, and the blue line is import from Canada. So you can see the very largest proportion is coming this way, and the full year 2023 and the full year 2024 look very, very even, which is good for industry to be able to have some stability and to understand what can possibly be coming going forward. This is the same data as a table itemized, and so you can see again the Canadian column in comparison to the total, and over onto the right is the increase or decrease. Now you can see China increased by quite a bit, but the actual amount is very, very small. Okay. And in the same regard, Europe dropped significantly compared to the past couple of years. But again, those amounts are small compared to Canada, which makes the total world import of US lumber almost flat last year compared to 2023. And then here we have the Canadian data, softwood lumber production of the main three provinces, British Columbia, Alberta, and Quebec. That is the blue bars showing volume running off the left axis, and the sawmill sales, which is in value, showing you on the red line, and the dollar amounts on the right axis. And once again, you can see comparative to what was the previous graphs for the US, 2024 was quite flat compared to 2023, which is encouraging to let the industry know how things are going and to plan for the future. And then back into the US now, what we have here is logs export. And this is in dollar amount values. The purple line is the world, and the other three are either Canada, China, or Japan. So you can see some up and downs there from 2020 to present, but this year and last year showing relatively flat in relation to each other. Once again, this is the same data as a table itemizing per year per country, and over on the right you can see the change per 2024 in comparison to the previous year. This different up and down of the individual countries works out to a nominal amount, and over the time frame only a 0.8% decrease of US log exports last year compared to 2023. And because everything is related, as you were looking at the volumes of US logs going to China, yesterday when the tariffs in the US came on, China announced that it will ban import of US logs, and they did not make it a political or diplomatic conversation. This is a very interesting tactic because they are citing phytosanitary conditions, meaning they claim that they found insect on the logs and are now blocking any US log import into China. So this is a punishment essentially for the various tariff that the US put on from Chinese goods into the US, which started yesterday. And to wrap all these things together, those graphs that you were looking at, US log export to the world amounted to $701 million last year, while US lumber imports just from Canada amounted to $5.1 billion just last year. And Canadian export of logs amounted to barely Canadian $400 million last year. So this is what I'm talking about, the very interrelated mechanism of what is the timber, how much of that is harvested into logs, how much of those logs go to the mill, and then how much lumber is made, what is that lumber worth, what are the volumes. And so for Canadian log export to the world, that did increase last year by a little bit more than 5%, with a big jump going to the US and another big jump going to China. Okay, great. So that's the data and some really, really good numbers to let you know, because there is a relationship. The manufacturing of lumber at the sawmill directly relies on log supply, which comes off the timber harvest. So to give a little bit of context for the Softwood Lumber Duty, There is a special interest group in the US, the US Lumber Coalition, who continues to put pressure on the US government to put a constraint at the border. Most by and large, it is the US timberland owners who are supporting the US Lumber Coalition to keep the volume of Canadian lumber into the US down. These log export data that I just showed you, that is coming from the US timberland owners. So, like, you can't have it both ways. If there is enough wood in the US to make the houses that people need to be built to live in, don't blame Canada for shipping lumber when the timberland owners are exporting raw logs. So the mechanism of the duty, and this is where there's a big difference between a duty and a tariff. The mechanism of the duty is held by the Commerce Department. So the U.S. Commerce Department has a fund, a kitty, a basket of money, which is identified according to the Canadian company that had paid and by how much had they paid. And this is at the moment now around US $10 billion, which is double what it has ever been in the past. Softwood Lumber Dispute 1 to 4, the negotiation for settlement of the dispute and for the distribution of that collected money started or happened when the amount collected was $5 billion. So this softwood lumber dispute has lasted longer and has collected more than anything in the past. During this, the duration of time that it's going to take for the U.S. industry, first of all, to get back the information about what is the availability of timber on the land base outside of the private timberland owner traditional basket, and what is the composition, is that timber merchantable, takes 3 years to build a sawmill. So Canada will be, if this continues, Canada will be sending more lumber to Japan, which we already do, and looking for other markets from the East Coast into Europe. There's other Asian countries that also want to increase their wood product buying. That will be relatively quickly because this, first of all, this doubling of the duty, and then the what would be expected a reduction of U.S. Importing of Canadian lumber due to the tariff will have a relatively immediate effect, while the 2 or 3 years from now that the U.S. is able to bring more lumber manufacturing online to serve itself, as seems to be the philosophy of all of this political diplomatic activity that's going on. So the last week of February, lumber prices did pop up a little bit, which is sort of normal for the time of year. Actually, seasonally would have happened during February, but the harsh winter across the continent was preventing not only construction activity, but also transportation. So that's coming back now, and lumber prices increased a little bit last week. And tomorrow on Thursday, we do Madison's, our weekly market survey, and my customers who have a login to the dashboard on Friday morning will see that new data. So if you like what you see here, click like so that this video will get recommended to other viewers. Subscribe here on YouTube to be notified when we make another update. And if you need more than just the small overviews that I give, these little snapshots of lumber prices and the other data, in the caption here is a link to my website. you can fill out a form to see a sample of the list of the full 500 softwood lumber and panel commodity prices that we track every week and what the price is that week. Your competition and your colleagues are already subscribing, so don't miss out.